So I have this whole intro and everything, so just kind of
That's
start.
okay.
All right.
Nope.
So Mark, congratulations on what must have been one of the strangest defense of your women's NCAA ice hockey championship ever. You won in 2019. No season last year, and here you are again, champions in 2021.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and look forward to it.
You won in overtime, and even for someone who doesn't get the mechanics of the game of ice hockey, there is nothing like overtime ice hockey. And if this time you prove to be the victor, I'm sure in the past you've lost in overtime as well. I'm constantly with this podcast too, trying to win over a bunch of new hockey fans by kind of exploring the game's past. Explain to someone why overtime hockey is just better than any other overtime sport.
Well, it's really exciting, and it's much better when you win than if you end up losing. But I think the excitement comes because at any moment on any play, the game ends. And so whether that's you making a play or the other team capitalizing on an opportunity, the game's over. There isn't an opportunity to go back to center ice, drop the puck, and get yourself back into it. And so, and then when you put, whether it's a playoff game or for us an NCAA championship game, then the season's over. So for us, you're either going to win it or you're going to lose it. And obviously, when you win it, it just creates, I think, a little bit more excitement than if you were to win in regulation and the clock started to count down and you're looking up, and whether you had a 1-goal lead or a multiple goal lead, you're going to end up probably winning that game in a situation like that. But over time, you just don't know. And as a coach, it creates a lot more stress because at any given moment, depending on, line combinations, who you're putting out there, are you putting the right people in the right situation? It just, to me, it's the most exciting part of what we do. And when you win, it's very gratifying. And as a reaction of people saw, of our team and our coaching staff, that tells the whole story.
Talk about that stress, because the players, obviously you feel the anxiety when you're overtime, but you're also exhausted. You've played beyond a regular game, but you're not exhausted. You're behind the bench. Uh, what do you do to manage that anxiety?
Well, you talk about athletes getting into the zone, and coaches are no different. And so you're in the moment, you're in the present, and you're just processing what's happening on the ice. What your players and what condition they're in. What line's going to go up, what the other team's trying to do. So there's a lot of things that you're trying to process, and then you have to make split-second decisions. And then you're watching it unfold as they go on the ice and the play takes shape. So it's gratifying. I think that's why we do it. The players talk about playing the game and the excitement of going over the boards and competing at a high level against great competition. It creates that adrenaline rush, and coaches are no different, other than the fact that we can't go on the ice and play the game. The next best thing is, being behind the bench and trying to maneuver and place your team in a position to have great success. And so it's an adrenaline run. And as you mentioned, with this last run and the way the season gone, and with COVID and everything that we had to deal with for 6 months, once the trophy was hoisted, you're back in the locker room. You're exhausted. I mean, the players obviously are much more exhausted than the coach, but from a mental standpoint, our whole staff, you're just sort of a sign of relief, but you're certainly exhausted about the process of the way the year unfolded.
So do you sleep well that night, or are you up all night?
I didn't sleep too well. We were fortunate enough. We got back to Madison, with an hour and 15-minute flight. And then we had probably had about, I don't know, 15 or 18 fire trucks, ambulance, police escorted us down to campus at, 2 in the morning. And interesting reaction, because as you're coming down some of them are main hubs, people are trying to figure out what's going on with all the lights going on and the siren, especially at 2 in the morning. But no, I didn't sleep that much that night, just because, again, as a hockey player will tell you, after an exhausting game or an exhausting series, or as you finish up the season, the toughest thing is to fall asleep after a game. So obviously we felt well about what we did, and I was very happy for the players and especially for our senior class for what they had to go through this season. And by their commitment and their sacrifices, it was fun to see them get rewarded at the end.
So you're kind of Mr. Badger hockey, and you played there. You got your degree there. You were the assistant coach for the men's team for about, what was it, 6 years
Yeah.
before moving on to the women's team. So you're talking about 3 decades of service to the University of Wisconsin. But I wanted to talk about the transition going from men's hockey to women's hockey. Were there some expectations that you had going into coaching women's ice hockey and some surprises that you found?
Oh, there's definitely surprises, but no expectations other than the fact that I had coached and been a general manager in the minor leagues for a year. As you mentioned, I coached on the men's side for 6 years here at Wisconsin. My one of my concerns was, if I take the step into women's hockey and maybe I didn't like it or it didn't go well or I wasn't very good at it, could I go back to the men's? And so I was fortunate enough that spring to coach in the World Championships for Team USA over in Europe and had a chance to reflect for about 3 weeks while I was doing that tournament as an assistant coach and reach out to people that had coached women's hockey. It was relatively in that period of time, 20 plus years ago, still new to a lot of areas. And so just talking to different people that had worked with women and had dealt with women's hockey players. And, all I did was get positive feedback. And, when I got back from Europe, my wife and I, were fortunate enough to get ourselves in a position to get interviewed, and then fortunately got the job. And as I look back over the last 18 or 20 years and being involved on the women's side, it's been awesome. I've had experiences and things happen to myself personally and to my family that never would have happened if I hadn't been in women's hockey. Both my daughters got a chance to play growing up. Both went on to college. One played for me here at Wisconsin. I got a chance to coach in the Vancouver Olympics. As you mentioned, we've won some championships here and had a chance to really impact a lot of young ladies' lives, and it's been very rewarding. I've got a chance to raise my family in one town, as I'm sure your dad will tell you. As a professional hockey player, you get traded, you move around, and you move your
Right.
family, and you have to have the support of your family to be in the hockey world. But having an opportunity to be in Madison and run my own program and do some of the things that I really enjoy, it's been a blessing.
How is the game different? And I believe me, I'm going to get back to you coaching your daughter because I find that
No,
dynamic
it's
always
I,
fascinating.
I mean, to me, the thing that I really enjoy, it's really pure hockey. So obviously on the women's side, we're not allowed to check. So it really becomes a game of skill. And, are you able to take your players and elevate their skill level, make them better skaters, passers, shooters, the things that make the, game for fans fun to watch. And can you play that at a high level? And can you give those players an opportunity to maybe wear that Maple Leaf jersey in Olympic Games for Team Canada or, with Team USA and get a chance to represent their country like I did, 40 some years ago and give them that experience. And so the game becomes, to me, a game that if I can, skate faster than you, if I can pass the puck better than you, do some things along that line, chances are that at the end of the day, I'm probably going to have more goals than your team and we're going to end up winning. So we focus on that. And some of the comments that I hear from our fans and people that, watch us play and certainly watch a lot of women's hockey now, they like the pure part of the game, the skating, the passing, the stick handling. The one thing that people don't realize is how competitive these young ladies are, and you get on the ice with them and they compete at a high level. What I've really enjoyed is they want to learn. They want to become better. They're like sponges. And so if you like to teach the game, there's not a better pupil to have in front of you than these young ladies.
So my brother got the brunt of this more than I did. My dad was his head coach for many years for soccer. I had him for a very, very brief stint when I played hockey in high school, just a couple practices really. But there seemed to be this pressure, like I got to be harder on you, so no one cries nepotism or anything like that. When you had your daughter on your team, how difficult was it to to look at her as just another one of the young women on your roster?
Uh, having gone through it myself when I played at Wisconsin for my dad, it's probably a little bit more challenging, for the player than the coach. Obviously, my dad had been coaching a long time, and as a player playing for him, you just have to trust that. Hey, you know what? He's pretty good at what he does, and so I'm going to trust, wherever he puts me or however he plays me. My job is to go out and play at a high level, and that's sort of what I did. When my daughter played for me, but it was probably more challenging for her than it was for me because I would have to step back and just what's best for the team, give on opportunities and uh, some of those things that we have to deal with as coaches as far as distributing ice time. But for her, and there were some nights maybe she didn't dress a game, and so all of a sudden she goes up in the crowd and a fan, just makes a comment like, "Oh, your dad mad at you? That's why you're not playing tonight." So it becomes challenging. My son, one of my sons played at Wisconsin, and we had talked about when he was making a decision. Do you want to follow in your grandfather's footsteps, who coached here for a long time, who's well known? Do you want to follow in your dad's footsteps, who was a player here and had his number retired? And so I think it's harder on the kids than it is maybe the coach. My toughest challenge was when I went home and my wife looked at me and says, "Why didn't you play Michaela tonight? Why didn't you give her more ice time?" And dealing
Yeah.
with that. But, at the end of the day, whether she played a lot, whether she didn't, she had a great experience, developed, some great friendships. The 4 years we're here, got a great college degree. And, as players will tell you, 10 or 15 years after the fact or 25 years after the fact, when you get together with your friends or your past teammates, you don't talk about ice time. You don't talk about where you played. You talk about life and the great things you had back at your college or your pro team that you played on with those teams. And life moves on and actually teaches you, a lot of individual lessons that the game so teaches a lot of people. But depending on who you are and where you are in the pecking order, and if you're playing for your dad or your
Mhm.
dad's your coach, you can take away a lot of experiences that'll help you as you deal with life's challenges.
One of my upcoming guests, Mark, is Willie O'Ree, who was finally inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018. Willie O'Ree was the first black player ever to lace up the skates for the NHL, and has spent the last couple decades of his life working to expand the hockey's fan base into communities that typically haven't really been aware of the league at all. To be honest, and we were talking about primarily people of color that he's trying to not only make fans, but also teach to play hockey. And a couple of those programs are now playing professionally. Women also, I would say, because of their overall lack of participation, are still a target that the NHL could go after in terms of generating new fans. And how do you think hockey could start getting more eyeballs, more female eyeballs to watch, and also more women to play?
Yeah, it's been fun and very enjoyable to see where hockey on the women's side has gone. From when I first started back in 2002 to where we are today, and we've made a lot of strides. The exposure that the game gets now is very helpful. Because in years past, when there was, an Olympic Games, whether it's '98 when the U.S. won its first Olympic gold on the women's side, or each Olympic cycle, usually the year after the Olympics, there would be this huge spike in female and women's hockey as far as the numbers getting involved, just because of the exposure that the Olympic gives to us. And now we're along the lines where the NHL Network is exposing the women's game all across the world. You look around at the landscape of some of the NHL teams. You look at some of the broadcasters on NBC. ESPN. You see a lot more women getting opportunities to broadcast games. You see women getting an opportunity. Cami Granado with a new Seattle team that's coming into the NHL, run by Ron Francis and his group. They're reaching out and exposing. Some of my former players are involved. Megan Hunter is heavily involved in the Chicago Blackhawks, has been for a number of years, and is well up in the management part of it, and does a great job there. And so there's still growth, though. And I think if I'm a female hockey player right now, I'm excited because if I want to get involved with an NHL team, I want to get involved in a community and expand the sport. I think the exposure is really at an all-time high and continues to grow. And I'm excited because, if I'm Megan Duggan and I've captained, 2 Olympic teams, I've won 3 championships at Wisconsin, if I want to get my foot in the door and, tap into the NHL in a management position, now I might be able to do it. Where years ago you'd look at it and say, well, we don't want women. They can't do this. But, you look at the broadcast with some of the young ladies that are getting a chance to broadcast around the world NHL games and doing a great job at it. So we're moving in a positive direction. If I'm a female player, I'm really excited about the future and the growth of the women's game. And it just continues to get better and better and continues to flourish. So excited for them.
Well, let's talk about your Olympic experience, Mark. We obviously have to go there. You were a member of the 1980 United States men's hockey team, the Miracle on Ice team, arguably one, the most famous team in hockey, certainly the most famous amateur team in hockey. If you ask my dad, the second greatest victory against the Russians. Of course, the Flyers beat them in 1976. But I don't know what's left to say about that team. It got turned into a feature film. Kurt Russell was cast as Herb Brooks in one of the most hilarious casting decisions I think I've ever seen. But we are now, we're 41 years after the fact, but it still seems like America can't get enough of you guys. You were inducted into the United States Hockey Hall of Fame in 2003. That's 23 years later, but it still shows like you're very, very top of mind. Why do you think that team still resonates so many years after the fact?
I mean, I think it's, partly to do with, it's obviously a feel-good story. If people, take their history and go back to, the way the country, the United States was, and, with the Cold War and the Russians and all that was going on with the, invading Afghanistan and just the things that were going on. And it's like with, our daily walk in life, sometimes you get yourself in a position where, you just need to wake up one day and have something to smile about. And what they be. It might be a good cup of coffee. It might be an email from a friend that you haven't heard for in a long time, but just a position to, smile that day because things may have not be going well for you. And so for us, it was an entire country and entire nation that was looking for something to hang their hat on and wake up and smile. And all of a sudden, here comes a bunch of amateur hockey players going against, as your dad will attest to, the most powerful team in hockey at the time. And, to say that you're going to have a chance to beat them, they'd look at you and say, yeah, right. There's like 0 chance. Hopefully you can keep it within a touchdown. But I think, people were just looking for this feel good story. And all of a sudden it transpired between everyone's TV screens or on the radio. And it just created this excitement that, as you mentioned, that 41 years later, a whole new generation, when the movie came out, had a chance to watch it. And again, they sort of related to what's going on in their world. So if it's my daughter's basketball team, or it's my son's hockey team, or it's a business that needs some excitement, all of a sudden they throw in the movie Miracle and people get all fired up about it. And I'll run into somebody on the street and they'll tell me exactly where they were at that particular moment, or else they'll tell me that their son or daughter has watched it 45 times in a row and they still get excited about it. So it's just this story that was created so many years ago that continues to have life and continues to put smiles on people's faces.
And it was the Russians. It always makes you miss the Russians as we once knew them. We got to the moon first because we had to get there before the Russians.
Yeah.
Ed Van Impe knocked out one of the Russians during the game in 1976, and the entire country cheered. We didn't even know who that man was. He was just a Russian. Rocky IV beat the Russians. Was
Yeah.
when you were up against the Russians, was it like, did you feel like you were playing for, you weren't just playing a bunch of guys, a bunch of amateurs that you probably had, obviously no personal conflict with, but was it easier to drum up like animosity towards them because, they were the Russians?
Well, I don't know if it was animosity or else you were just so scared that you were going to get embarrassed because they were that good. But no, you make a good point. I mean, it was always, the times I played against the Russians, it was always like, it wasn't the Czechs. It wasn't you're playing the Swedes or even Canada. You're playing like the Russians. And so you better be ready to play because if you're not, it could get ugly real quickly. But obviously, the way those players were brought up, the way, we were brought up in North America, it was just different. And so, I mean, the one reaction that I always take away from, the game that we played against the Russians at Lake Placid was at the end of the game when we finally got to 0-0 on the clock, the horn went off and we're celebrating at one end and it was, euphoria, throwing sticks, hugging each other. And if you quickly look at the other end of the ice, on the blue line lined up, with maybe their stick or their gloves on their stick and looking down on us, one end's got excitement, one end's, obviously disappointment, but also a few smiles in regards to it's a game. You're supposed to enjoy it. And, for the Russian players, they had, live in the barracks for 11 months in the dormitories, even if they were married, they were work out 3-4 times a day. You do that multiple years and it's a job. They were in the Army. Their Army was playing hockey, becoming as good as they could, winning world championships, winning gold medals, and showing the world that they were just better than everybody. And so you take away that scene, and it's just like one team celebrating because they just won an important game. The other team's looking down, and almost a couple of them like, oh, that's how you're supposed to enjoy the game. It's a game, and you need to enjoy it. But it was always intimidating because it was like the Russians, and yeah.
When you were, and it wasn't the gold medal game. I think that's something that people always kind of forget is you had to win another one after that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget. People that have seen the movie always get a kick out of it because I always tell them that Kurt Russell actually made Herb out to be a nice guy in the movie because he was tough on us from day one until the end. And so after Friday night's game, it was obviously tape delayed. So a lot of us went up Friday night to where a lot of our family was staying and actually watched the game on tape delayed and wanted to make sure that we actually won the game and that we were all dreaming. So when we saw it on tape delay and we won it again, we got up Saturday and we had to practice Saturday. And Herb came to the rink Saturday morning and he was probably in the most foul, ornery, grumpy mood that he had been with us, in the entire season that we were together. And we're trying to figure out why he was so mad and upset. And, we had just beaten the Russians. All we had to do was beat a bunch of Finns on Sunday morning. We had the gold medal. And now that I've been in coaching a long time, I knew exactly how he felt and I knew exactly what he was going through, other than the fact that I was a player at that time and I didn't know that. And but we had the hardest practice that Saturday probably of the entire season. And his message to us was, he needed to bring us down from the euphoria and the excitement of Friday night's game down to a level that we were ready to play Sunday morning because, as we all know in the hockey world, anything can happen on a particular day. And he, of course, we didn't listen too well because we ended up falling behind the Finns going into the third period. And I remember in between the second and third period being down 2-1, it's like he came in the locker room and basically said one thing twice. And he says, if you lose this game, you're going to take it to your effing grave. Walked about 3 steps, said the exact same, and walked out of the locker room. And I remember vividly, we're all looking at each other, and you know what? He's right. And
Mhm.
I think all the things that we went through as a team and as a group of players, you know, good days, bad days, struggles, creating great friendships that still exist today. We knew we were going to win the game. We knew we were going to play well in the third period. We just didn't know what the script was going to look like, and so we went out in that third period and played the best period of the entire Olympic Games, and obviously got to the finish line. But I'll never forget Herb commenting and saying that, and understanding. You look back on it. Can you imagine if we lost to the Finns?
Ugh.
It would have been yeah, the worst story of all times, and we would have been part of it.
The Finns would have become the new Russians.
Yep, exactly.
Were you aware? You know, the Olympics happened to take place in the United States this year, and I always wonder, like, if it had been in Sweden or anything like that, you probably would have been less aware of the tremendous amount of excitement you were creating, or maybe you weren't actually aware of how crazy America was going for your team at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, you know, in the technology world we live in today, everything's instant. And, you know, back then, you know, Lake Placid's only 2,500 people, and we had no idea what was going on. And so I always tell people the story that, you know, you're in the, you know, broadcast and communication business. And, you know, if you were a reporter, in the middle of Lake Placid in the big parking lot was the communication hub. So if you were a reporter from wherever and needed to get a story back to your country or back to your city, you had to go into this hub. You had to get on a phone, hopefully that one available, you know, and send your story back that way. And so we had no idea what was going on, other than the fact that the last couple games that we played, they would send in telegrams. So we had outside our locker room all these telegrams that were being sent from all over the world, and you know there were thousands of them. They would bring in a couple bags a day of people showing their support, and so that
Mm-hmm.
was probably the only thing that we could play off of, other than the fact that you might call, you know, to a friend or whatnot, and get something that's going on somewhere else. But we never got a feel of it till after you know, the gold medal ceremony Sunday afternoon. We got up Monday. All of a sudden, the president sends his plane up and wants us all to come down to the White House and have lunch Monday morning. And so we get on the plane in Plattsburgh with a bunch of other U.S. athletes, fly down to Washington, D.C., and they're going to go to the White House for lunch. And on our get off the plane, we get on these buses, and we're making our way down to the White House. And there's all these people lined up across along the streets with flags and celebrating, or trying to figure out what's going on. Is something going on with the president? Finally, the bus driver says, "No, these people are lined up for you guys." And
Wow.
I'm going, "What? Really?" So that was probably the first time we got a feel of what was going on outside of Lake Placid.
Wow. I have Marks. Where's your gold medal now? Is it something you keep handy? Is this
Actually, I gave
something?
it to my son the other day. He wanted to take it to one of his buddies and put it around his necks and take a picture with it. So it's hanging with him right now.
So the fervor eventually somewhat dies. I mean, it'll never fully go away. I don't think, but you're still a hockey player. You got a career, that you got to think about, and this is where your storyline and my dad's storyline sort of intertwine. You end up playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins. My dad happens to be captain for that team. How was it going from being, paraded down our nation's capital on the way to meet the president to somebody who's now got kind of to earn a roster spot in the NHL?
Yeah, I remember that couple of weeks. Actually, the rest of the regular season in Pittsburgh and then the playoffs, it was a whirlwind. I was really uncomfortable with what role I was put in and the situations. And Monday, we fly back from the White House to Plattsburgh. I fly back to Minneapolis, get back to Madison, and 3 days later, I'm getting off a plane in Pittsburgh, and you got all these media there, and now I'm a Pittsburgh Penguin, and we're playing the New York Islanders that weekend. So I go from doing that to jumping into practice in Pittsburgh with your dad as the captain. And why I mean I'm uncomfortable because all of a sudden here comes this no name guy that 2 weeks ago nobody knew about unless they lived in Madison, Wisconsin, and followed college hockey, and all of a sudden we're in the spotlight. And so I come to practice on that Friday, and Your dad had won cups. Other players on that team had won Stanley Cups. Seasoned veterans in the National Hockey League. I haven't played a game yet, and all the reporters want to do is talk to me. And I was really uncomfortable with that because, as you mentioned, I was going to get a chance to get my feet wet in the National Hockey League. I was going to get an opportunity to, live out a dream of putting that NHL jersey on and playing the National Hockey League. And the one thing I do remember, and it was led by your dad. The leadership group that was in Pittsburgh at the time. Were obviously veterans. They'd been through a lot. They had won. They understood what a pro career looked like, and so they took me under my wing, and they made me feel comfortable and gave me an
Mm.
opportunity to, put that jersey on, go on the ice, and do what I was capable of doing in a more relaxed atmosphere. And if I hadn't had that, it would have been hard because I remember going out the first game and the place is packed and they want to see me play. They want to witness me. They want a part of me. And it was uncomfortable. But, with your dad and the other people within that leadership group, it helped me be able to go on the ice and play.
So my dad made you feel welcome and at home.
Exactly. And,
That's very
if I hadn't had
surprising.
that, like I say, I was uncomfortable. So we'd go play in Philly, or we'd go play. And, after the game, your dad might have, been the number one star of the game, but the reporters, they don't want to talk to him. They want to come and talk to me. And so, it just was stepping into a new chapter in my life that, you had to handle, you had to be aware of that was coming into it. And so, being grounded and, having a dad be a coach and be in the spotlight. Growing up, I had witnessed that and saw that, and so I had some experience with dealing with it. But again, I had to lean on the leadership group in Pittsburgh and the captains and the assistant captains to navigate me through that 2 or 3 months that we finished off the season with.
Were you happy to see that the number of reporters around your locker room start to kind of dwindle, or was it sort of sad? Like, oh, okay, well, that those glory days are sort of behind me.
Well, it's unfortunately it dwindled, but it never went away. And so that I remember that summer and traveling around and doing what we normally did as a family. Now as a professional player, just that was going to be part of my life, for the rest of my life. And the one thing I learned and understood quickly and got a feel for was that if I was going to be a pro for any kind of length, there were certain things that I had to learn, I had to develop, and I had to get better at. And I learned that, the first couple months that I was in Pittsburgh, came back to training camp that following year. They had drafted a number one, a center iceman, which is the position I played, and a guy by the name of Mike Bullard, who ended up having a great career. So reality came quickly because I remember, if I was going to make, the big club in Pittsburgh that fall, I had to beat this guy out, or I had to play better than, somebody else if I was going to make the roster. And, I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. And, had a, I didn't know if I was going to have a 2-year career or a 5-year career or whatever it was going to look like. But, early on, you needed to figure out how to be a good pro and what that meant.
What are you most proud of looking back at your career? Is it the gold medal? Is it the fact that because a lot of players from the men's hockey team, the U.S. men's hockey team, never stepped foot into the pros, and you're one that not only did it, you weren't a flash in the pan. I mean, you played almost 700 NHL games. You're a bona fide NHL veteran. Or is it the coaching? Is it what is it that when you think about, okay, this is the pinnacle of my career? Is there a
Well, I
moment that
think,
sticks out?
yeah. I mean, there's probably a chapter, as a player, what some of the highlights, and then certainly as a coach, a, a different type of highlight. The thing that I get excited about coaching, and I just went through 2 weeks ago, is watching a team celebrate a championship and knowing you had a part of it. You didn't play, but you had a part of it, and you're giving something that as a player you cherish the rest of your life. And so they're going to get a championship ring. And so as I told him after the game, I know it means a lot today, but 10 years from now or 20 years from now, it's going to mean more because of the things that you had to go through, the sacrifices you had to make, and getting to the end and winning. It means a lot more later on in life than it does at that immediate time in when you have it. And so there's a bunch of them that I've had as a coach, and I feel very fortunate. And certainly as a player, there's certain things that stick out that really have a lot of meaning. And obviously, doing something special, and your dad can attest to this. And when I talked to him a little while back, we talked about the special moments with special teams, and they go on for life. It's an eternity. So his teammates in Philadelphia that won cups together, you just take that and cherish it the rest of your life. And whether you see that person regularly or you don't see him for 20 or 25 years and you get together, you have something that bonds you and is really special. And so as a player, you look at the Olympics, and unfortunately we just lost one of our teammates not too long ago. And so there's been a lot of conversation about what happened there, and a lot of conversation amongst the team. And so reflecting and cherishing and rehashing things is always special. So the Olympics is something that it hit us. It hit us differently. People handle it differently, but it's something that as I look back on my playing career, it sticks out, and rightfully so, just because of the impact that it had on me as a player, and certainly as a human being, but more so on what we were able to do and put a lot of smiles and impact a lot of people because of that event.
Mark Johnson, thank you for getting together with me this morning. We're speaking here in the morning because I understand you have conditioning drills set up for this afternoon.
It's one thing about you learn as a player, as a coach. We won a championship couple weeks ago, but the sun comes up the next day, and as a coach, it's like, what's next? What's next? What do we do next? And we get into this mode. So what's next is spring conditioning. So we had the players on the ice yesterday, and we're right back at it because September will be here before you know it, and off we go with a new season. So I love the name of your podcast. It's awesome, and so I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much, Mark. Hey, good luck on the three-peat.
Thanks so
Go
much.
Badgers.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Okay, take care.
So long.